In a quiet suburban neighborhood where tree-lined streets and well-manicured lawns gave the illusion of peace, an unsettling tension simmered beneath the surface. The story begins with two families. The Johnsons, a warm and hardworking black family who had recently moved into the area, and their neighbors, the Millers, a white couple whose hostility toward anyone different from them was thinly veiled. What started as small acts of rudeness quickly spiraled into something far darker. Michael and Sarah Johnson were thrilled when they finally closed on their dream home. For years, they had saved every penny to provide a better life for themselves and their two young children, Mia and Jordan. The house was perfect, a cozy 3-bedroom with a spacious backyard where the kids could play. It was located in what seemed like an idyllic community, filled with friendly faces and picturesque surroundings. But appearances can be deceiving, and the Johnsons would soon learn this lesson the hard way. From the moment they moved in, the Millers made it clear they weren't welcome. At first, it was subtle. A cold stare across the fence, a muttered comment about new people moving into the neighborhood. Then came the more obvious signs of disdain. One morning, Michael found a pile of trash bags dumped on his driveway. Another time, Sarah noticed her flower pots knocked over, the soil scattered all over the front yard. When she asked Mrs. Miller if she had seen anything suspicious, the woman simply shrugged and said, "Maybe you should keep your place cleaner." The harassment didn't stop there. The Millers began playing loud music late at night, drowning out any chance of peace for the Johnsons. Car horns blared at odd hours, and bright headlights shone directly into their windows. Each incident left the Johnsons feeling uneasy, but they tried to brush it off. After all, moving to a new neighborhood meant adjusting to unfamiliar dynamics. They hoped that with time things would settle down. But the Millers had no intention of letting up. Their behavior grew increasingly aggressive. One afternoon, while Michael was mowing the lawn, Mr. Miller stormed out of his house yelling obscenities and accusing Michael of invading his space. Sarah, who was watching from the porch, rushed outside to calm her husband before the situation escalated. That evening, as the family sat together at dinner, they couldn't shake off the feeling of dread creeping over them. Something wasn't right, and it was becoming harder to ignore. Despite the growing unease, the Johnsons refused to let fear take hold. They believed in the goodness of people and hoped that their kindness might soften the Millers' hearts. Michael went out of his way to greet them warmly whenever he saw them. He even brought over a plate of homemade cookies one weekend, hoping to break the ice. But instead of gratitude, the gesture was met with contempt. Mrs. Miller sneered at him, saying, "We don't need your charity," before slamming the door in his face. The turning point came one balmy summer evening. The Johnsons were enjoying a rare moment of relaxation in their backyard. Michael had fired up the grill, cooking burgers while Sarah kept an eye on Mia and Jordan as they played tag under the fading sunlight. Laughter filled the air, and for a brief moment, it felt like everything was going to be okay. But then, the peace was shattered. Out of nowhere, the Millers appeared at the edge of the yard, their faces red with rage. Mr. Miller barked accusations, claiming the Johnsons were being too loud and disturbing the neighborhood. His voice carried through the otherwise serene evening, drawing the attention of nearby residents. Sarah tried to explain that they were merely having a family dinner, nothing excessive, but the Millers weren't interested in listening. Before anyone could react, Mr. Miller pulled out a handgun, pointing it menacingly toward the Johnsons. His wife stood beside him, shouting insults laced with racial slurs. Terror gripped the Johnsons as they realized the gravity of the situation. Michael instinctively shielded his family, ushering them inside while keeping his eyes locked on the weapon. Once safely indoors, they locked the doors and huddled together, hearts pounding with fear. That night, sleep eluded them. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside sent shivers down their spines. How could someone act so cruelly without provocation? Why did the Millers harbor such hatred for them? These questions swirled in their minds as they grappled with the reality of what had just happened. Michael knew they couldn't stay silent. Early the next morning, he called the police, explaining the events of the previous night and providing details about the ongoing harassment. Officers arrived within the hour, taking statements and inspecting the scene. However, much to the Johnsons' dismay, the response was lackluster. While the officers acknowledged the severity of the situation, they seemed hesitant to take decisive action. Instead, they encouraged both parties to resolve their differences amicably, a suggestion that felt dismissive and unfair given the circumstances. Frustrated yet undeterred, the Johnsons decided to take matters into their own hands. They began documenting every interaction with the Millers, recording videos and jotting down notes whenever incidents occurred. They filed formal complaints with local authorities, determined to ensure that their voices were heard. Though progress was slow, they remained steadfast in their belief that justice would prevail. As days turned into weeks, the tension between the two households reached a boiling point. The Millers, emboldened by the lack of consequences, continued their campaign of intimidation. Yet, unbeknownst to them, karma was quietly plotting its course. The stage was set for a reckoning, one that would expose the truth and bring long overdue accountability. For now, the Johnsons clung to hope, knowing that sometimes patience is the greatest weapon against injustice. The days following the terrifying incident in the Johnsons' backyard were filled with a mix of fear, anger, and determination. The family tried to go about their daily lives, but the shadow of the Millers loomed large over everything they did. Michael couldn't shake off the image of Mr. Miller pointing a gun at him, while Sarah found herself constantly glancing out the window, half expecting trouble. Even Mia and Jordan seemed affected. Their laughter had dimmed, replaced by cautious whispers as they played indoors instead of venturing outside. Despite the emotional toll, the Johnsons refused to let the Millers dictate how they lived. They decided that documenting every interaction was key to protecting themselves. Michael invested in security cameras, installing them around the perimeter of their property. He also started carrying his phone everywhere, ready to record any hostile encounters. Sarah, meanwhile, reached out to friends and family for advice. Her cousin, who worked as a lawyer, urged her to file a restraining order against the Millers. "You have every right to feel safe in your own home," she said firmly. Encouraged by this support, the Johnsons took action, submitting paperwork to the local court. While waiting for the legal process to unfold, life in the neighborhood grew increasingly tense. The Millers, perhaps sensing that their behavior was under scrutiny, became more brazen. One morning, as Michael left for work, he noticed spray-painted words on his garage door. "Go back where you came from." His stomach churned with anger, but he forced himself to remain calm. Instead of confronting the Millers directly, he called the police again, making sure to capture photos of the vandalism before cleaning it up. This time, the officers promised to investigate further, though their tone still lacked urgency. Word of the escalating conflict began to spread among the neighbors. Some expressed sympathy for the Johnsons, offering kind words or small gestures of solidarity. Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman who lived across the street, baked a batch of cookies and dropped them off one evening. "I'm so sorry this is happening to you," she said softly. Others, however, kept their distance, unwilling to get involved. A few even whispered behind closed doors, questioning whether the Johnsons were exaggerating the situation. It was clear that not everyone saw the Millers' actions as problematic, a fact that weighed heavily on the Johnsons' hearts. One particularly unsettling event occurred late one night. As the family slept, they were jolted awake by the sound of glass shattering. Rushing to the living room, they discovered that someone had thrown a brick through their front window. Attached to the brick was a note scrawled in red marker, "Leave now." Fear gripped the household once again. Michael immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes. While they collected evidence and dusted for fingerprints, they admitted there wasn't much they could do without concrete proof linking the act to the Millers. Frustrated but resolute, the Johnsons boarded up the broken window and installed additional locks on all doors. Amidst the chaos, Sarah began to wonder if moving might be the only solution. She voiced her concerns during a quiet moment with Michael, tears streaming down her face. "What if we're putting our kids in danger by staying here?" she asked. Michael understood her fears, but he also knew giving in would mean letting hate win. "We didn't do anything wrong," he replied gently. "This is our home and we deserve to live here without fear. If we leave now, they win." Determined to reclaim their sense of safety, the Johnsons turned to community resources for help. They attended a town hall meeting where residents gathered to discuss neighborhood issues. Standing nervously at the podium, Michael recounted their experiences with the Millers, emphasizing the need for accountability and unity. To his surprise, several attendees nodded in agreement, sharing stories of their own run-ins with the couple. One man revealed that the Millers had once accused him of stealing mail simply because he was delivering packages for a neighbor. Another woman described how Mrs. Miller had yelled at her child for accidentally kicking a ball into their yard. Slowly but surely, a picture emerged of the Millers as bullies whose toxicity extended far beyond the Johnsons. Encouraged by the growing support, the Johnsons decided to take their fight to social media. With Sarah's cousin helping them craft a post, they shared their story online, including screenshots of complaints filed with local authorities and photos of the vandalism. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, hundreds of people had commented, offering words of encouragement and tagging local news outlets. Journalists soon picked up the story, shining a spotlight on the racism and harassment plaguing the neighborhood. The attention put pressure on law enforcement to take the case seriously, prompting detectives to revisit the incidents involving the Johnsons. Meanwhile, the Millers seemed oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Emboldened by their perceived power, they continued their campaign of intimidation. One afternoon, as Sarah hung laundry in the backyard, she heard loud noises coming from the other side of the fence. Peering cautiously, she saw Mr. Miller deliberately revving his lawnmower engine, creating a deafening racket. When she politely asked him to lower the volume, he responded with a string of expletives, calling her names laced with racial slurs. Shaken but determined not to engage, Sarah retreated inside, recording the encounter on her phone. Unbeknownst to the Millers, their reckless behavior was leading them down a dangerous path. Karma, often patient yet inevitable, was beginning to catch up with them. Late one evening, as the neighborhood settled into silence, strange activity unfolded near the Millers' house. Neighbors reported hearing loud arguments coming from inside, followed by the sound of shattering glass. The next morning, residents woke to find the Millers' car vandalized, its tires slashed, windows smashed, and paint splattered across its surface. Speculation ran rampant, with some quietly suspecting the Johnsons had retaliated. However, the family denied any involvement, insisting they preferred to seek justice through legal means rather than stoop to violence. As the weeks passed, the Millers grew increasingly paranoid. They installed multiple security cameras around their property and began carrying weapons openly, claiming they feared for their safety. Their erratic behavior only fueled rumors and suspicion. Then, one fateful day, a neighbor walking their dog noticed something unusual near the Millers' driveway. Upon closer inspection, they spotted what appeared to be ammunition boxes partially hidden beneath a bush. Concerned, they alerted the authorities. When law enforcement arrived, they conducted a thorough search of the Millers' property. What they uncovered shocked everyone. A secret stash of illegal firearms stored in the garage. Rifles, handguns, and even military-grade equipment were found stacked haphazardly alongside boxes of ammunition. Mr. Miller claimed the weapons were for protection, but given his history of threatening behavior, the explanation fell flat. Further investigation revealed that many of the firearms were unregistered, violating numerous laws. Both Mr. and Mrs. Miller were arrested on charges of illegal possession of weapons, with Mrs. Miller facing additional accusations of aiding and abetting. News of the arrests rippled through the neighborhood, leaving residents stunned. For years, the Millers had operated with impunity, their hostility masked by privilege and indifference. Now, their crimes had finally caught up with them. As the Johnsons watched the police cars pull away from the Millers' driveway, they felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, vindication, and sadness. Relief that the immediate threat was gone, vindication that justice had been served, and sadness that such hatred existed in the first place. For the Johnsons, the ordeal was far from over. While the Millers' arrest marked a turning point, Rebuilding trust and finding peace in the neighborhood would take time. Still, they remained hopeful. They believed in the goodness of people and knew that change, though slow, was possible. Little did they know the events that followed would bring unexpected opportunities for healing, and perhaps even redemption, for the entire community. The arrest of the Millers sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, leaving residents divided between disbelief and relief. For weeks, whispers filled the air as people pieced together what had happened. The discovery of illegal firearms in the Miller's garage painted a chilling picture of the couple's true nature. It wasn't just racism or harassment. They were stockpiling weapons, potentially endangering everyone around them. While some neighbors expressed sympathy for the Johnsons, others struggled to reconcile the Millers' actions with their outward appearance as ordinary suburbanites. Yet amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. Karma had finally caught up with the Millers. For the Johnsons, the aftermath of the arrests brought mixed emotions. On one hand, they felt a profound sense of vindication. After months of enduring relentless harassment, threats, and vandalism, justice had been served. The authorities couldn't ignore the evidence this time, and the Millers' crimes ensured they would face serious consequences. But on the other hand, the family couldn't help but feel drained. The constant fear, sleepless nights, and emotional toll had taken its toll on all of them. Michael found himself replaying every moment of tension with the Millers, wondering if there had been any way to avoid the conflict altogether. Sarah wrestled with anger and sadness, questioning how two people could harbor so much hate. And Mia and Jordan, though resilient, still clung to their parents more tightly than before, wary of strangers and loud noises. As news of the Millers' arrest spread beyond the neighborhood, it sparked a broader conversation about racism and accountability. Local media outlets picked up the story, highlighting not only the Johnsons' ordeal, but also the systemic issues that allowed such behavior to persist unchecked. Journalists interviewed residents, community leaders, and even experts on racial discrimination, shedding light on the challenges faced by minority families in predominantly white neighborhoods. The Johnsons became accidental advocates, their story resonating with countless others who had experienced similar struggles. Messages of support poured in from across the country, with many thanking the family for speaking out and refusing to back down. Despite the growing attention, the Johnsons remained grounded. They didn't seek fame or recognition, they simply wanted to live peacefully in their home. However, they recognized the importance of using their platform to inspire change. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Michael and Sarah sat at the kitchen table discussing next steps. "We've been through hell," Michael said, his voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "But maybe we can turn this into something good, for us, for the neighborhood, for anyone else going through what we did." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "What if we organize something, like a block party or a community meeting? Something to bring people together." Her idea was simple, yet powerful. By fostering connection and understanding, they could begin to heal the fractures caused by the Millers' toxicity. Plus, it might remind their neighbors that despite everything, they were here to stay, and they weren't afraid to build bridges. The couple wasted no time putting their plan into action. With the help of Mrs. Patel and a few other supportive neighbors, they began organizing a block party. Flyers were distributed, inviting residents to gather for food, music, and games. At first, responses were lukewarm. Some neighbors hesitated, unsure of how to interact with the Johnsons after everything that had happened. Others worried about drawing too much attention to themselves. But slowly, curiosity turned into enthusiasm. People realized that avoiding the issue wouldn't make it disappear. Confronting it head-on might actually lead to progress. On the day of the block party, the atmosphere was electric. Tables lined the street, laden with homemade dishes contributed by neighbors eager to share a piece of their culture. A local band played lively tunes while children ran around laughing, their earlier fears forgotten for the moment. The Johnsons stood near the entrance, greeting guests with warm smiles and open arms. To their surprise, nearly everyone showed up, including some who had previously kept their distance. As the afternoon wore on, conversations flowed freely, breaking down barriers that had long existed. One particularly poignant moment occurred when Mr. Thompson, a retired teacher who lived 3 houses down, approached Michael. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "I should have spoken up sooner. I saw what was happening, but I didn't know what to do." His apology was heartfelt, and Michael appreciated the gesture. "It's never too late to stand up for what's right," he replied with a reassuring smile. That exchange set the tone for the rest of the event, encouraging others to reflect on their own roles in the community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Sarah looked around at the scene with tears in her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be moments of doubt, prejudice, and misunderstanding. But tonight proved that unity was possible. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was evolving, one step at a time. Meanwhile, the Miller's absence left a void in the community. Their house sat empty, a stark reminder of the damage wrought by hatred and fear. Eventually, real estate agents listed the property for sale, attracting interest from several potential buyers. Among them was a young Latino family, the Garcias, who were looking for a fresh start. When they moved in a few weeks later, they were greeted warmly by their new neighbors, including the Johnsons. Unlike the Millers, the Garcias radiated kindness and openness, quickly becoming beloved members of the community. Over time, life in the neighborhood began to normalize. The scars of the past lingered, but they no longer defined the present. The Johnsons continued to host gatherings, determined to maintain the momentum sparked by the block party. These events fostered deeper connections among residents, creating a network of support that transcended race, age, and background. Children played together without hesitation, parents exchanged gardening tips, and shared meals became a regular occurrence. Looking back, the Johnsons often reflected on how far they'd come. What started as a nightmare had transformed into an opportunity for growth, not just for them, but for everyone involved. They learned that standing up against injustice required courage, resilience, and unwavering faith in humanity. And while they wished they hadn't had to endure such hardship, they knew their experience had made them stronger as individuals and as a family. Karma, in its unpredictable yet inevitable way, had delivered its verdict. The Millers' downfall served as a cautionary tale, reminding everyone that hate rarely goes unpunished. For those willing to confront adversity with grace and determination, however, redemption and renewal are always within reach. As the Johnsons settled into their second year in the neighborhood, they embraced the future with optimism, knowing that love and unity could overcome even the darkest of times. The months following the block party marked a turning point for the neighborhood. The sense of unity and understanding that had blossomed during the event began to take root in everyday life. Slowly but surely, the community transformed from a collection of isolated households into a cohesive group bound by shared experiences and mutual respect. For the Johnsons, this shift brought both comfort and pride. They had fought hard to reclaim their peace and dignity, and now they were seeing the fruits of their labor. One of the most noticeable changes was how neighbors interacted with one another. Before the Millers' arrest, many residents kept to themselves, avoiding conflict or controversy at all costs. But the block party, and the conversations it sparked, had broken down those walls. People started saying hello more often, stopping to chat while walking their dogs or watering their lawns. Mrs. Patel, who had always been friendly, became something of a neighborhood matriarch, organizing weekly coffee mornings where everyone could gather and share stories. Even Mr. Thompson, the retired teacher who had apologized to Michael, began mentoring local kids, offering free tutoring sessions in his garage-turned-classroom. For Mia and Jordan, the newfound camaraderie among neighbors made a world of difference. No longer confined to playing indoors out of fear, they joined other children in impromptu games of tag or soccer on the cul-de-sac. Their laughter echoed through the streets once again, filling the air with joy rather than tension. One day, as Sarah watched them race around with their friends, she felt a lump rise in her throat. It struck her how close they had come to losing these simple pleasures. the freedom to play outside, the innocence of childhood friendships. She vowed never to take such moments for granted. Meanwhile, the Garcias settled comfortably into their new home, quickly becoming an integral part of the community. Carlos Garcia, a software engineer, bonded with Michael over weekend barbecues, swapping recipes and tips for grilling the perfect steak. His wife, Elena, joined Sarah's gardening club, teaching the group how to grow herbs and vegetables inspired by her Mexican heritage. Their teenage daughter, Sophia, befriended Mia, and the two spent hours giggling over school projects or planning sleepovers. Watching the Garcias thrive reminded the Johnsons of the importance of diversity, not just as a moral ideal, but as a source of strength and enrichment. Despite the positive changes, healing wasn't instantaneous. Old wounds took time to mend, and trust didn't come easily after what the neighborhood had endured. Some residents still harbored lingering doubts about whether true reconciliation was possible. A few even questioned whether the Millers' absence truly solved anything, fearing that similar prejudices might resurface under different circumstances. These concerns weren't unfounded. Racism and discrimination are deeply ingrained societal issues that can't be erased overnight. Yet the Johnsons believed that progress, no matter how incremental, was worth celebrating. To address these lingering anxieties, the Johnsons decided to host another gathering, a neighborhood reflection night. This time, instead of focusing solely on fun, they encouraged open dialogue about the challenges the community had faced and the lessons learned along the way. Held in the Garcias' spacious backyard, the event drew a diverse crowd, including newcomers and longtime residents alike. Under twinkling string lights, people sat in a circle, sharing their thoughts and feelings without judgment. Michael opened the discussion by recounting the family's journey, from the initial harassment to the eventual triumph over adversity. He spoke candidly about the pain and frustration they had endured, but also about the hope that sustained them. "We're not here to dwell on the past," he said firmly. "We're here because we believe in a better future, for ourselves, for our kids, and for anyone else who calls this place home." His words resonated deeply with those present. One by one, others chimed in, sharing their own perspectives. A young Asian couple talked about the microaggressions they had faced since moving in, while an elderly white man admitted feeling guilty for staying silent when tensions ran high. Even Mrs. Patel, normally reserved, tearfully recounted how her own immigrant parents had struggled to find acceptance decades ago. Each story added another layer to the collective narrative, weaving together threads of vulnerability, courage, and resilience. By the end of the evening, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Conversations that might have seemed uncomfortable or awkward earlier in the year now flowed naturally, fueled by empathy and understanding. Neighbors hugged goodbye, promising to stay connected and support one another going forward. For the first time in a long while, the community felt like a true community. Not just a cluster of houses, but a tapestry of lives intertwined. As weeks turned into months, the neighborhood continued to evolve. The Johnsons remained at the heart of this transformation, serving as unofficial leaders and advocates. They collaborated with local organizations to host workshops on racial sensitivity and conflict resolution, inviting experts to speak and facilitate discussions. They also worked closely with schools to promote inclusivity, ensuring that children grew up in an environment where differences were celebrated rather than feared. Their efforts extended beyond the immediate area, too. Inspired by the national attention their story had garnered, Sarah launched a blog chronicling their experiences and offering advice to others facing similar struggles. Titled, "Finding Light in the Shadows," it became a platform for marginalized voices, featuring guest posts from individuals across the country who had overcome prejudice and discrimination. The blog gained traction quickly, amassing thousands of followers and sparking meaningful conversations online. While the Johnsons embraced their role as changemakers, they also prioritized self-care. After everything they had been through, they understood the importance of balance. Weekends were reserved for family time, whether it was hiking in nearby parks, attending church services, or simply lounging at home with pizza and movie marathons. These moments of normalcy grounded them, reminding them of why they had fought so hard in the first place. Yet, life wasn't without its occasional challenges. Rumors occasionally surfaced about the Millers' legal proceedings, stirring up old fears and resentments. Though both Mr. and Mrs. Miller remained incarcerated pending trial, their names still carried weight in certain circles. Some speculated that they might appeal their charges or blame external factors for their actions. Others wondered if their absence would embolden others with similar views to act out in their stead. These uncertainties weighed heavily on the Johnsons, but they refused to let fear dictate their lives again. Instead, they focused on building a foundation strong enough to withstand any storm. They strengthened relationships with supportive neighbors, expanded their network of allies, and continued advocating for systemic change. They knew that true justice wasn't just about punishing wrongdoers. It was about creating a world where hate had no room to grow. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze, Michael stood on his porch, sipping coffee. He gazed at the street before him, marveling at how much it had changed since they first arrived. Gone were the days of hostility and unease. In their place stood a vibrant, interconnected community, united by shared values and aspirations. As Mia and Jordan bounded out the door, backpacks slung over their shoulders, he called after them, "Have a great day at school." Their cheerful replies warmed his heart. In that moment, Michael realized something profound. Karma wasn't just about retribution. It was also about restoration, the opportunity to rebuild what had been broken and create something stronger in its place. The Millers' downfall hadn't merely punished their cruelty. It had paved the way for renewal, for forgiveness, and for love to flourish. And for the Johnsons, that was the greatest victory of all. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they faced the future with unwavering optimism. After all, they had already proven that standing firm in the face of adversity could inspire change, not just for themselves, but for everyone fortunate enough to cross their path. As the seasons changed and another year rolled by, the neighborhood continued to thrive in ways no one could have predicted. The scars left by the Millers' hatred had not disappeared entirely, but they had faded into faint reminders of a darker time. What remained was a community that had grown stronger, more compassionate, and deeply connected. For the Johnsons, this transformation was both a testament to their resilience and a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. Winter arrived with its crisp air and festive spirit, bringing opportunities for new traditions. The Johnsons decided to host an annual holiday gathering, inviting neighbors to celebrate together. They decorated their home with twinkling lights, garlands, and a towering Christmas tree adorned with ornaments collected over the years. On the night of the event, laughter and music filled the house as families mingled, sharing dishes from their respective cultures. The Garcias brought tamales, Mrs. Patel contributed samosas, and Mr. Thompson baked his famous apple pie. It was a feast that reflected the diversity of the neighborhood, a symbol of unity in action. During the celebration, Michael stood at the center of the living room, holding up a glass of sparkling cider. "To family," he said, raising his voice just enough to be heard over the chatter. "Not just our blood relatives, but the ones we choose, the people who stand by us through thick and thin." Cheers erupted around the room, followed by applause. Sarah smiled proudly, watching how far they had come since those terrifying nights when fear ruled their lives. Now, surrounded by friends and loved ones, it felt like they truly belonged. The holidays also brought closure on the legal front. After months of delays and hearings, the Millers' case finally reached its conclusion. Both were convicted of multiple charges, including illegal possession of firearms, harassment, and racial intimidation. Their sentences, several years in prison, sent a clear message: hate crimes would not be tolerated. While the verdict brought satisfaction to the Johnsons, it also stirred mixed emotions. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase the pain caused by the Millers' actions. Still, the outcome reinforced their belief that accountability mattered, even if healing took longer. With the legal battle behind them, the Johnsons turned their attention to the future. They began dreaming bigger, envisioning ways to expand, their impact beyond the neighborhood. Sarah's blog, Finding Light in the Shadows Remainder, had grown into a movement of sorts, inspiring readers across the country to confront racism and discrimination head-on. Encouraged by the response, she partnered with local activists to organize workshops and panel discussions. Together, they tackled topics ranging from systemic inequality to allyship, empowering individuals to take meaningful action in their own communities. Michael, meanwhile, channeled his energy into mentoring young men of color. He started volunteering at a nearby youth center, where he led sessions on leadership and personal development. Many of the boys reminded him of himself, at their age, bright, ambitious, yet often underestimated because of their race. Through candid conversations and shared experiences, he hoped to equip them with the tools they needed to navigate a world still riddled with prejudice. "You don't have to let anyone define your worth," he told them during one session. "Your voice matters, your dreams matter." Back at home, Mia and Jordan flourished in their newfound confidence. No longer burdened by fear, they embraced school activities, sports, and friendships with gusto. Mia joined the debate team, impressing her teachers with her eloquence and passion for social justice. Jordan became the star player of his Little League baseball team, earning praise not just for his skills but for his sportsmanship. Watching their children thrive filled Michael and Sarah with immense pride. They knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but seeing their kids grow into resilient, empathetic individuals made every challenge worthwhile. Spring returned, painting the neighborhood in vibrant hues of green and pink. Flowers bloomed in gardens, birds chirped cheerfully, and the air buzzed with renewed energy. The annual block party made a triumphant comeback, drawing an even larger crowd than the previous year. This time, organizers added a charity component, collecting donations for underprivileged families in neighboring towns. The initiative resonated deeply with residents, many of whom had experienced hardship themselves. By giving back, they felt a sense of purpose and connection that transcended their immediate surroundings. Amidst all the progress, the Johnsons occasionally paused to reflect on their journey. Late one evening, as they sat on the porch sipping tea, Sarah turned to Michael. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if we'd given up?" she asked softly. Her question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken memories. Michael leaned back in his chair, gazing at the stars. "Yeah, I do," he admitted after a moment. "But then I look around, at this house, at our kids, at the neighbors, and I realize something. We didn't just survive, we thrived, and that's because we refused to let hate win." Sarah nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for everything, even the hard parts, because without them, we wouldn't be here, doing what we're doing." Their conversation underscored a profound truth. Adversity, though painful, can become a catalyst for growth. The Johnsons had transformed their trauma into triumph, using their experience to inspire change and foster unity. They understood that true strength lies not in avoiding challenges, but in facing them with courage and grace. As summer approached, the neighborhood prepared for another milestone, the opening of a community garden. Spearheaded by Elena Garcia and supported by volunteers, the project aimed to create a shared space where residents could cultivate plants, share harvests, and bond over a common goal. Located on a vacant lot donated by the city, the garden quickly became a hub of activity. Children helped plant seeds, seniors offered gardening tips, and everyone pitched in to build raised beds and install irrigation systems. For the Johnsons, it was a reminder of how far the community had come, from hostility to harmony, from division to collaboration. On the day of the grand opening, the garden buzzed with excitement. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and tables groaned under the weight of homemade snacks and drinks. As Michael addressed the crowd, thanking everyone for their hard work, he couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. "This garden is more than just soil and seeds," he said, gesturing to the lush rows of vegetables and flowers. "It's a symbol of what we've built together, a place where roots run deep and hope grows strong." His words struck a chord, eliciting cheers and applause. Later, as families explored the garden, snapping photos and marveling at the blooms, It was clear that the neighborhood had found its rhythm. The scars of the past hadn't vanished, but they had healed enough to allow joy and connection to flourish. Looking back, the Johnsons knew their story wasn't unique. Across the country, countless families faced similar battles against racism and injustice. What set them apart was their refusal to stay silent or give in to despair. They chose to fight, not with anger or violence, but with love, patience, and determination. In doing so, they proved that change is possible even in the most unlikely places. Karma, in its mysterious way, had delivered justice, but it had also provided something far greater, an opportunity to rebuild, to forgive, and to dream anew. For the Johnsons and their neighbors, the future brimmed with promise. Together, they had shown that hate may sow discord, but love and unity can heal even the deepest wounds. And in that knowledge, they found peace, a peace that would guide them forward, season after season, year after year.